All right, so the next piece is about the update on what we did recently, basically in 2012, and this year to date on each product. Again, we'll try to illustrate with examples and demos. Other than what's been asked, is it the kind of presentation you're expecting? Any particular direction? Like we were saying with Patrick, it's unlikely we're going to go to the end of this presentation, I mean, in terms of number of slides. So we may have to cut it. So if we have some guidance from you on where we should go, we already have had some of this guidance a few minutes ago, but if there is anything else that we can do to gear the presentation to the optimal place for you, just let us know.
Because I want to get to demos.
Yeah, they would like to basically use the slides as background for the discussion, so they have a whole bunch of extra stuff. So
the best thing the best feedback we can get is if you see a slide, just go, okay, we got to go on. And we'll skip through it. We've got plenty, and we brought enough that we can really focus on the areas that you're interested in. So we do not want to cover it all. We really want to focus on a specific set of areas of interest. So if you see something and it's like, okay, we got that, just let us know. We'll skip through it.
Now, it would be cool if you guys put in some ringer slides, like maybe like a NASCAR logo slide, or what Gartner thinks of you, because that would be hilarious, because then Tom will say, skip it.
We don't do Gartner or anything. So,
then you're already winning.
Yes.
Winning.
We're off
All right, let's go.
I'm a disruptor.
Well, we will be off camera when I edit this, but right now we're not off camera.
Never mind then.
Check.
Yeah, we're running along.
Okay, all right, so NPM, like I said, it's a flagship. So NPM is a big product. It's been on the market for years now. What we've done recently, the most noticeable thing is again, customer feedback, we've detected that, I don't know why I'm skipping the first one. Let's do the first one first. BigIP F5 devices, we see them more and more, definitely in terms of load balancing and all that stuff. So I'll show you one of the screens that we have. We've started supporting. We don't have full support for them, but we focused on the most important stuff, which is what you're going to see now. Connection is pretty good, actually. Huh?
Oh yeah,
latency is very decent. And for hotel connection, I'm pretty surprised. All right, so we have, for example, the hardware health of this. F5, you see the fan sensors, the power supplies, temperature. You see some node details, sorry, about this node and its status. More details here. The list of virtual servers. On this side, you have the interface utilization. You have the CPU. I'm not going to go through everything because we would be here for hours. But the point is, we've added F5 support to the latest version of NPM.
Is that just on the LTM side or for the GTMs as well?
GTM?
The global traffic manager?
No, we don't have support for that one yet. Like I said, that's a V1 for support, and we still have a fair amount of stuff to add, but the GTM is not there yet.
I'll say thanks to SolarWinds for adding that additional layer of support. That was nice to see after the last upgrade. Like,
okay.
All of a sudden, my screens for the F5s are a lot smarter.
Okay.
It just kind of happened, and that was pretty cool.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Well, and that hardware monitoring screen actually also applies to a lot of other devices as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
yes, agreed. Yes.
So you were talking about the hardware monitoring or the F5 specifically?
Well, both actually.
Okay.
But I was commenting on the F5 stuff specifically because F5 has been historically very difficult to pull all that sort of information out of. I was building universal device pollers and all the rest of it's tedious. So.
Hardware health monitoring, so we're talking temperature, power supply, fan speed. We've added this for more devices, obviously, Cisco, Juniper F5, Dell HP, which is the top 5 of what we see. I mean, you just saw what this is for the F5, so there's no point showing it again. A very popular wireless controller from HP, the MSM 760, 765. We won't have time to go through that, but just so you know, NPM has built in the management, same level of management pretty much for wired networks and wireless networks. So your Wi-Fi environment is completely managed by NPM. It's not a commercial option. It comes, I mean, out of the box and built in NPM. So we support Aruba, we support Meru, we support Cisco, We have some level of support for HP, obviously. So I know that you guys we're talking about Ruckus Wireless. We don't have support for it yet, but I don't know what's up with these guys, but we hear a lot about these guys. I don't know them very well, but they are increasingly popular. They seem to be doing a good job. So
well, you can watch the stream after this is over, and you can find out what the big deal about Ruckus is.
Yeah, it's a good point. I may be watching it, but so it's on the list for what's coming next from a wireless perspective, but we don't have any date or any commitment so far. All right, improved NPM infrastructure. Something that people love. It's a small thing, but it's not about managing devices, but it's kind of about managing NPM itself, if you will. Many people said, well, I have many users connected to NPM, and I want to know what these users are doing. Some config has changed in NPM. I want to know who did what, when. So that's what basically we're treating this like events. It's not network events, it's NPM internal events. And we'll say, all right, the admin user logged in from, changed a view on all detail, added a view, deleted a node, maybe deleted a group, deleted this device. So you can track for pretty much as long as you want who did what on the platform.
Are these interfaces using HTML5 or Flash, or a combination of the above?
It's not.
It's HTML5. It's HTML and increasingly.
Yeah, it's not completely 5. We're going to 5.
Okay, but it's not like
Flash.
all Flash.
No.
Okay.
No. In fact, there's really not any Flash.
There's not any Flash at all, and it's not all 5 yet.
And in a minute, I'm gonna show the new charts, and you'll see an example of a non-Flash useful HTML widget.
Very good. Thank you.
For those who know NPM, you'll like this one as well, I hope. We have a pretty important tool which is called the custom property editor, which is basically how you can create new attributes for your nodes or your interfaces. You can create an attribute and tag them for belonging to a particular department or a particular group, or attaching, I don't know, contract number, whatever additional information you want to feed into the platform. So you do that through properties, and basically what we did is we moved that tool. We had that tool, the property editor. We had that tool before, but not integrated in the web. So people were kind of complaining the fact that they have to go back to the Windows application, native Windows application, to change their properties. Why don't you just do it through the web? All right, we just did it. Is the point we're making here. So you see asset tags, CD carrier. So you can create pretty much any property on any type of managed object. You can export and import values. So it's a pretty flexible tool. We have a very good feedback on that.
And that really does mean that the last two things that people were asking to move over, which was obviously that, and the second one was alert management, are now both available through the web.
Yeah. All right, moving on. IP address management, IPAM. So like I said, the key point is replacing the spreadsheet that people use a lot. Oops, sorry. To basically, I'll show just one screen just so you can see the point. It's the online demo server that I'm using here. Just so you know, the online demo server, you guys know that, but if you don't, that's you can go. It's publicly available. Everything we're going to show today pretty much is on this online demo server. You can go there, play with it exactly like I'm doing here. The only thing is, because it's a public demo server, sometimes you click in some areas and the product tells you, well, we're sorry, it's disabled because it's the online demo. Because otherwise people would be making modifications on the SolarWinds online demo, and that would not be good.
Okay, so since you brought it up, I want to say another thing about our demo system. So one of the rules in all of these is, I mean, we're kind of crazy to actually put products out on the internet, but these are essentially running on unmodified. I mean, we mess with the data on the back end so that there's something to present, obviously, but this is actual product, it's not a simulation, and so when you're in there and you're looking at how features work and what it looks like, I mean, we're internally using these things as reference systems, the UX teams or anyone else, so you're seeing what we see, and these are always real product. They go live on the day that we launch new versions of the product, so you can use the product pages on the website and look for that test drive demo link when you have questions about how things work, and you'll be able to find links to it and check it out at that time.
Yeah. So you can, I'm just showing that to see that. That's basically when you do next, that's how you upload your spreadsheets. Say, all right, I'm going to structure it the correct way. I'm going to import it in IPAM. And from now on, IPAM is going to be my repository. That's what I wanted to show, just to show you the visuals. That's it. A pretty cool feature. So we have a lot of stuff in IPAM. I'm actually sorry. I'm going to stay here for a sec. All right, so the main use case is replacing the spreadsheet. All right, as far as managing your DHCP and DNS infrastructure. But obviously, we're not replacing the DHCP. We are not the DHCP server and the DNS server. We're just interacting with it. What I mean by that is we recently introduced the fact that IPAM can be your centralized console to manage your IP addresses and your DNS and DHCP server. In other words, you design your configuration in IPAM, your subnet, or your IP address management config, and you connect IPAM to your Cisco or Microsoft DHCP and DNS servers. That's what this matrix shows is for Microsoft, Cisco, and Linux from a DNS and DHCP management or just monitoring. The management is basically read and write. In other words, you design your config in IPAM and you push your config into Microsoft DNS management tool or Cisco DHCP management tool, including the ASA. So the benefit of that is you still have these servers running, obviously, but you can shut down the screen and you can do everything through IPAM. So that's your unique console to really manage your IPAM, and it talks to the servers and does whatever needs to be done. So the IP management infrastructure itself is basically reflecting what IPAM's configuration is. So that completely changed the game for IPAM from where we were just a spreadsheet replacement, because that was a super spreadsheet, okay? But when you want to configure it effectively in your DDI servers, you needed to go to the Microsoft or Cisco server, replicate the same thing, and just make it happen. People said, why don't we just do it from IPAM? That's what the last, basically we spent 2012 doing that. Mm-hmm. We're gonna do it soon for Linux, for buying and ISCs, and yes.
What about support for other vendors?
It's coming based on the demand. That's where we are. Who do you see as others?
I recommend Infoblox.
Okay, I was going to say. Interestingly enough, these guys are an interesting case because as a DDI vendor, they have that kind of stuff for their infrastructure. And interestingly enough, we see customers asking us to manage their servers. So I'm not exactly sure why. I have an opinion about that, but I won't voice it.
I understand that there's a conflict in the management systems that they have versus what you have, but they're also kind of ships in the night type products. Mm-hmm. So,
well, I think, but it's also to call out that Infoblox is commonly seen in the larger, complex enterprise customers that have some sort of. Usually, they have at least one guy with like Perl skills that can push data in and out of it. Mm-hmm. And not discounted, but your key customer segment is like 500 and below, right? Which I rarely see in Infoblox at 500 and below. Right. I mean, I like it. I think it's an awesome product. Mm-hmm. IPAM is awesome, but. I mean, it's big, expensive. Yeah. It's like I'd love I'd love to rototill my front yard with a bulldozer, right?
We've got both. They're fairly complementary. There's probably some overlap though.
Well, I mean, you got 2,000 switches too.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask the question because
that'd be in the airing of grievances part.
They're good. It's just they solve big problems.
So. I'm a customer, so I get it, and I understand the unified view. But outside of the unified view, you guys are late to the game for IPAM. BlueCat's been out there, and
you mean in terms of like DDI?
Late in terms of.
Yeah, absolutely. So why you guys?
Well, a customer who's going to implement BlueCat is going to probably end up. It's going to be a bigger project. They may go a appliance route. They are going to maybe replace some of their infrastructure services. Where for us, they probably already have a lot of these components in place. Maybe they've got some, and actually it's not just Cisco and Microsoft. They may also have IP addresses that are being managed by their wireless controllers locally. They haven't, it's the, hey, don't use a spreadsheet message first to get them off of their spreadsheets. And actually Importer's gotten pretty good too. You can actually tell it how to take the spreadsheet apart and pull that in. But they aren't necessarily thinking at that moment of, oh, I want to actually have DDI where my DNS services are working correctly because my DHCP scopes are talking to my DNS server. And so for them, they kind of are also late to it as well. Does that make sense? Like they've been running those services and DHCP scope providers and everything else. They've been doing it by hand. And here's something where they can say, wait, hold on a minute. I can just log in, or even better, delegate that to a local admin and lock them down to scope control in a remote campus for this one set of subnets. That's something that they haven't been able to do before.
It makes a lot of sense to me, but part of my job here is to frame it for the people who aren't here.
Got it.
So absolutely it makes sense, but I think it needs to be people hear IPAM, and the first thing they think is they think info blocks and they think BlueCat.
Right. The cost, the ratio of features cost is my main answer. I mean, the amount of features. Our motto is we're offering 80% of what the others do for 10-20% of the cost, and we try every time we release a product, we try to position our products this way. That's my answer. Cool. Let me show you a pretty funny one. It's not funny, but it's interesting from a usability standpoint. I'm gonna kill that because there is a cookie going on, and if I don't do that, I'm gonna get the previous. If I don't kill the browser, I'm gonna get the window. Got it. Before, so I'm doing this. The split scope. If you want to define a scope which is split between two different servers, you can do this. All right, you select your two different servers. You just introduce this one. Everybody loves this one. It's just this, you know, you can control how much you put on the server on the left and the server on the right, and it recalculates the IP address ranges on both sides. It's a gadget, I'll give you that, but people love it. And it's more than a gadget. I think it's a good illustration of the attention we pay to usability. I'm sure BlueCat doesn't have that. That's another part of my answer.
I'm sorry, but every time I see that slider, I want to find people that use it and smash their fingers with a hammer because they can't learn to subnet. I had to do it. Everybody else should have to do it too. That's my rant.
To the user. All right.
Back in the day, when I pushed packets uphill both ways.
In the snow.
User delegation, it's another one. Enhance import to improve the import. Anyway, we've been through that.
No, user delegation is huge. I mean,
yeah, it's huge. I'm just trying to control time. User delegation is actually.
If you're that guy, and the only person who can reliably, you're the oracle of IP addresses, and everybody in the company needs to, they want to provision, the desktop wants to provision a laptop to somebody, and they got to talk to you. There's no vacation or weekends. No. Delegation, that was one of those features we added. I'm like, finally.
No, that's a fair point.
You're allowed to delegate these 5 addresses. Use them carefully.
Yeah.
I like that.
Or okay, DevLab with a vSphere server that's kind of rogue and on its own. Here's a subnet that you can play with, and you're sandboxed, and send it more.
Yep. All right. And to be too far behind. UDT is basically tracking user connection, like I said. Let's go to the one of the main screens. So users are identified through Active Directory. So you can I'll skip the first ones. Those are more interesting. So you see the username and you see the most recent login time. Pretty much everything can drill down and get more detail, especially from a history perspective. The device watch list is here. The top 10 access points are here. And another type of use case is from a capacity planning perspective. It looked at all your switches and tells you how much ports on each switch is actually being utilized versus available. And it shows you the switches that are basically saturated in terms of capacity. These 4 switches, they're at 100%. They will not accept more connections. So you want to make sure that from a capacity standpoint, that's a very helpful tool to make sure from a capacity standpoint.
So your port availability report, does it have something that you can tweak to say, I only want to see ports that have been available or unused for X period of time? A port that's unused right now, but it was used 20 minutes ago, is not an unused port.
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Do
you know?
I think that you could do it with the report tool. It's not going to be like that top 10 is just how utilized they are.
Yeah, I want to find the ports that haven't been used in 30 days.
Right. That's a good candidate for something that can actually be used for real.
I can actually go and reallocate that port to something else. I may be able to coalesce ports and yank a card out. We've had customers that say, I'm at this % utilization, can I recover assets?
Or switch reuse as you move an area toward wireless, and now you've got this nice big switch that's got 2 active ports.
So anyway, if you can't do that, you need to write that down.
I need to come.
Write this down.
That's a university.
I don't want to hold you up on your presentation, okay?
Right. And usually it's just after you invested a whole bunch in upgrading your switch infrastructure for your.
You said that
Dig
back
right
in like the late 90s. You need a CLI. Write that down.
I'll ask the question. I'll come back to you. We have that's different. Inactive user accounts for at least 30 days. That's duration based, but that's not your question. I understand that. I'll come back to you on this.
Well, it is because, and I don't think you showed the drill down to a port details view, but it is tracking the MAC and IP information for that port over time. So it's in the database.
We have the history exactly.
Most network management systems have all the data.
Yes.
Many of them don't tell you much about it.
That's a very good. That's a fair point.
Yeah, so my guess would be if it's not already one of the reports, and I don't know that it is, but you could certainly use a report generator to create one because that's going to be one of the elements, sort of the last, where there was a last recorded history element for that node.
Sure. All right.
All right.
Back to Terry's point though, write it down. You create it as a canned report, I'll use it.
All right.
Look at him, he picks it up and he starts writing it down.
It's like back in the day, the cattails Mac cross
and then I'm going to tweet about it, and then I'm going to put it on Thwack, and then I'm going to blog about it. So yes.
Yeah, another vote for that one. I actually go in, clear counters, and then roll back through with pipe the output of the counters to an include to see if any bytes have gone through that interface, just to see if I can reclaim them.
I missed that. Explain again.
I'm just voting for the report again. That's
So you say the runs a report which count.
How I do it now is
bytes
painful.
out, clears the counters, compares them against two segments. If bytes in, bytes out, the second segment is +1 over the first run taken out, and he's left with a list of ports that haven't been used.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's painful.
Pretty
terrible.
close.
Yep.
You can fix that for me.
Yeah. Well. Yep. Take it down.
It's a really good shell script you could write.
But it at least needs to be clear though, if you're going to say this is a % utilization, it needs to be on what basis do you, there has to be a statement that says on what basis are we claiming something's unused. Otherwise, how are you going to trust it?
Well, and it needs to be it needs to be somewhat configurable, or at least we have different durations, because 30 days might be important to you and 15 days might be for someone else. Yeah.
Well, 15 days is a vacation, right?
Right.
In America, or
Well,
in Europe.
But if you're like a
Actually, no, 24 is.
But if you're a conference or a training center where you're kind of rolling out these temporary networks, then it might be less.
Can also enable optional filtering.
Let's go get to the other interesting stuff.
You see, there is a mention to an SQL query that can filter the nodes. There might be a possibility. I'll be happy to come back to you on this. All right. We're in beta now for the next version of UDT. We're going to have whitelist and port shutdown. So if you detect a unwanted user on one port, you're going to be able to shut down that port from UDT. I mean, it's not everybody wants to use that, but if you want to use it, that's convenient.
You've got a virus that's trying to spew out onto your network. That's kind of a handy thing.
Yeah, exactly. All right, NCCM. NCM is the name of a product, and the discipline is NCCM. Like I said, it's configuration backup, automated configuration changes. I'll go through the UI quickly. So I'll show you the basics. Well, the last 5 configuration. So you have basically your nodes like we usually do. You have policy violations, which is NCM has a set of basically security checks. So you see some related to STIGs, DISA-STIGs, we have SOX, we have FISMA, and so on. And basically it runs periodically through your config and tells you how many offending statements you have for each of these different standards. And obviously you can drill down and view what nodes violate what check. You can actually even create your own checks. There is a language, including regex, where you can define what kind of checks you want to do, reflecting your own best practices, if you will, in terms of configuration checks. And
that library is also integrated with Thwack, so that you can also pull those down that are created by users.
Yep. Actually, I'll show that now. So that's how you. So if you go to the compliance area, if you click on Manage Policies, you see you have the policies with all the different standards that are covered, and you can actually go on Thwack and share it on Thwack, and you can upload the one you've created, you can download the one that others have created, and there is this kind of ecosystem, if you will, on Thwack of people sharing their compliance checks. It's pretty interesting to see how that works.
And a lot of Fed customers who instead just import and export them as files.
Yeah. So, but back to the initial thing. So obviously backing up your configuration. We'll try to look at this node, for example.
So I assume you do rollback,
Yep.
and that's just reload the configuration and go hit the reset button on the box.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can actually also take your config and deploy it to a number of devices at the same time. You can designate them as, you can also flag them as config types, not just running and startup, but you can also do like baseline or custom types as well, so that maybe you want to ship a device with one config, get it in the rack, and then actually deploy something else. So you might have like a shipping staging config that you can then reuse as you move devices in and out of the rack.
So you have the typical compare config that you would expect. You have for the, I'm on a particular node. This is the history of all the configs that we have historized that we keep in the database. Typically, customers keep the configs for about 3 months in average. You have some people that keep an unlimited number of configs that just basically never delete them. They have, some of them have years of configuration history. We can download the config either on a scheduled basis every day or only if it's changed, if you want to basically optimize your storage and not store. If your configs don't change frequently, why would you store the same config again and again every night? There is a mode where you can say, well, just store the config only if it has changed compared to the previous one I have in the database. It's nice optimization. But basically, you can select two configs for this node. Right, you select them with these drop-down boxes, and basically you click compare, and this is going to be replaced by a side-by-side of the config. You see the two configs, and you see color coding showing you, all right, red is what is new on this one and what is not on that one, or modified, or the usual compare diff kind of tools is pretty much what that does. If you go to the configuration management, you'll see the types of action. You can compare, you can download, you can upload, you can execute scripts against devices, one or multiple. Yes?
Is there any like AAA accounting information with that version compare? Because it's always nice to be able to go and yell at the person that broke the configuration that you're comparing.
No.
Okay.
No, it's a good one.
You do have
I'm sorry.
the ability to tell us if the config changed overnight, right? It'll notify you, hey, somebody went in.
Yes, it's called real-time change detection, yes.
Right, and you'll see who did it, right?
Well, and it can work two different ways. You can either be based on the diff, the nightly diff of the backups, or you can set an SNMP trap that'll tell it, hey, pull a download anytime it changes. So if somebody brings the green wire into the closet, it'll go ahead and tell you that config changed. So you're not going to get a complete AAA audit log from the device itself. Yeah. But at least you're going to know right away that somebody's in there messing with the config.
If it's somebody behind your back changing the device, you want to know who it is because the information just isn't there. If it's coming from NCM, yes, you will. If the change is coming from NCM, you will know. If it's coming from the devices, you won't. But at least it knows it's changed. You can do the diff and see what has changed. You can roll back on the previous ones. So we have all right.
Many of the devices actually do have the data available. If you care to go and you can go show log and you can do stuff like that. You can, when you do the CLI to look back at the config, it often says changed by TCS.
Yep.
So, but there's a command line to be able to execute that. So click on transfer status.
Anyway, so my point is just that the data is available there if you can go and.
Well, and one of the things that you can do actually is you can execute scripts directly on that device. So if you want to have the code for that, click on like script results for one of those execute scripts on one of those devices. Hopefully we get one that's not broken. Try again. It's not
it's disabled.
It's disabled. But yeah, so you get the results that came back from that asynchronous call, so that you get.
Here it is.
So if that command had returned that to you, you'd be able to see it right there. That'd actually be kind of a handy thing to have it run against, scheduled run against a whole bunch of devices, so you always have that.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Multipolar support, what that means is the fact that recently, end of last year, we've introduced the fact that, well, some of this activity, downloading, uploading not so much, but downloading, running checks and everything can be fairly, intensive. from a computation standpoint. So we've improved NCM so it can leverage the additional polar infrastructure that we have. So just think from an NPM perspective, NPM can use multiple different polars either in your data center or actually geographically spread across your remote sites and everything. So you can have 5, 10 different remote polars. So NCM was not able to leverage those before. Now, since version 7.1, NCM can actually leverage the power of the additional polling engine to perform the configuration management tasks. All right, IPSLA, that was, yeah, you guys know about IPSLA, I'll skip this. So I'll do a quick overview of what it has. So actually, let me go to the, I don't know why. Going back to go to the NPM one. I'm going to show you in live. No, there's no point to. Oops. I'm going to the live demo of the IPSLA product on VNQM. I just had the link to the blog post, but why not going through the product? So remember, we have the IPSLA management. We can create the operations, right? The IPSLA operations that are going to generate synthetic traffic through the network. So
I'm not sure I'm tracking what you just said. You can configure them in here and push them to devices?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We instruct the Cisco router to create this operation that's going to test the network from the Cisco router itself to any responder. Usually it's a Cisco router, but it doesn't have to be. And basically it generates packets that try to mimic any kind of traffic. You can mimic HTTP traffic, UDP traffic, VoIP traffic. So the operation that tests the network will experience the same kind of quality as the same real traffic would experience.
Can you do multi-group sets? So what I mean by that is if I have VoIP, I might want to have a whole bunch of sources simultaneously pulling a whole bunch of destinations. And if I have to do that one at a time,
No,
it's excruciating.
there is actually a pretty sophisticated system that creates all the operations. You have a mode which is fully meshed, for example, where you can define your nodes. For example, each router on your remote site, you configure them. Actually, they're usually already configured because Ryan manages them anyway. So you install VNQM, the IPSLA product, and you say, all right, create all fully meshed operations between these sets of 5 routers. It's going to create 25 operations for you in a single click and stop generating these.
Well, the provisioning is a big deal because I haven't checked it recently, but somebody I know did a survey of a lot of the very expensive, dare I say, C8 and other products.
Right.
And the surprise was that most of them choked on doing provisioning if there were already existing operations. They weren't smart enough. There's an S&P index, and all they had to do was pick a different number to try again, but they couldn't do that.
And you don't want to put, what, 500 operations on one router? That's not, doesn't slow the performance down at all.
Well, there's that. I mean, it's, if you have a chainsaw, you can cut your foot off.
Yeah. It'll actually, because the trick, I mean, you get the point, is that I can log in and manually configure IPSLA all day, but the automation of being able to do that and say, I want to mesh these, but I want to exclude these, or I want to do hub and spoke, or I want to do star here, and it actually, in the UI, has little icons to show you what it's doing, and you can opt them in and out, and it'll go in and figure out what's already there. And if it finds that the monitor's already there, then it'll go ahead and set up the monitoring to pull the data. And if it's not, it'll add it.
Right.
Well, I've used that tool. It's beautiful. It's really awesome. Yeah.
It's really more of an automation tool than a technology tool. I mean, it's using a tried and true technology. It's not
just such a time saver, though. Just blast it in and go. And now you have historical data for all your SLA operations. It's wonderful.
It's a great tool. Our only regret is people don't know about it. That's why actually we changed the name. It used to be called IPSLA, but it was speaking only to people who knew what IPSLA technology. The mistake we've made is that we have a product called NetFlow, and it's working great because people know what NetFlow is, and we thought the same would happen with IPSLA. We called it IPSLA because we thought that people knew what IPSLA was, and guess what? That's completely different. Only advanced user knows what IPSLA is, what it does, how important it is. So that's why we actually kind of changed the name. Hopefully it's gonna bear its fruits. But yes, it's a great tool. The Cisco technology, I have to say, is pretty unique. I haven't seen any other vendor. Juniper tries to mimic that, and many try. Cisco is years ahead of everybody in terms of, in my opinion, in terms of that stuff.
And this isn't a SolarWinds problem, but that is a problem I have with the industry, because I love IPSLA. My biggest gripe about it is it's Cisco, and it works on the routers. I have no other metric to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
I think you guys sit in a very unique position in the market, because you are one of the few companies doing active tools around this and doing orchestration tools around this that are really winning. And I know it's not your core business. This has to change. Something has to come along, whether it's a standard, whether it's, you know, a vendor like you guys. Something else has to come along to help us do these metrics. This is lacking in the industry, and you guys sit in a very interesting perspective to make that happen.
That's interesting.
Well, and it may just come from interacting with customers. Right? A lot of our customers maybe aren't going to go out and spend a lot of money on a huge VoIP management infrastructure, but they're running it, or they've converged stuff, and they've got, you know, whether it's not exactly telepresence, but they've got streaming protocols, and they've got a few Cisco routers here and there, and being able to simulate those calls or even measure the suitability of the network before they actually deploy services on that network. And for them, a lot of times, it's what's the next call going to be like? Not what did I get in my last call in the history, but when the boss picks up the phone the next time, how's the quality of that call? So that's really more what the problem they're trying to solve, rather than, oh, well, I would expect to have all these other services because I know what a comprehensive voice management platform looks like.
Right.
So setting aside what customers are, kind of like, that's great, customers are asking for something, but where's your all's R&D going into? Where's the future? I mean, to Josh's point, this is, you know, network management is awful today. It's awful. If anybody says otherwise, they're lying.
Hey, don't steal Terry's thunder.
It's not your all's, I mean, you guys are working with the...
Is that +1?
There's not a lot of virtual Twitter right there. Right? You guys are screen scraping, you're using SMP. I mean, you know, these things are 10, 20 years too old. So, I mean, where are you guys going next?
Well,
are you all offering some leadership, or are you just chasing the wagon?
Well, as far as SNMP, for example, I mean, the ball is in the vendor's court. I mean, if they don't implement something, what else can we do?
But it's not. There are, you know, we sat with Cisco yesterday, and they told us about all these great little forums they were in with all the other vendors. You know, we were a little annoyed that they were closed forums and that papers didn't come out of it, but they're doing it. Are you guys part of initiatives in the industry to lead? You guys hold a leadership role in the industry.
No, well, yes and no. We're not good at leading and being forward-thinking. That's not what our business model is. Our business model is understand what the users want, because we're constantly in touch with the users, understand what they want today, not in 2 or 3 years from now, but what is their pain point today, right? And we're responding to these pain points with solutions that are functionally as rich as the others, but they're cheaper. And obviously easy to use. That's really what the business model of SolarWinds is. Some call it commoditization. I mean, we're not ashamed of that, right? For us, it's not a bad word. And doing what the others are doing, not inventing new solutions, but re-implementing existing solutions to existing problems that are everyday problems, and doing it better and cheaper is what we're good at. So that's why we're not the most visible companies. Yes, we're aware of that. We're kind of paying attention through not only directly, but through what our users are telling us. But if we don't feel the push from the users, we're not going to be there. That's not us.
And I'd like to comment that the price is a very sensitive point. I felt for probably about 20 years that most net management products are 1 to 2 orders of magnitude too expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And to coin a term, perhaps, what I'm seeing now is a lot of undermanaged sites where they've invested so much in an expensive product that only covers part of their network.
That's a very good point.
And then they're wasting a lot of valuable people's time running around to discover something silly like a duplex mismatch on a port that wasn't being managed because the license didn't cover it.
Yeah, well, and absolutely. And I've worked for an enterprise software company, and I mean, I think you just hit it. It comes down to, I mean, we all know engineering is expensive. And if you're at the bleeding edge and there's 10 new protocols and 3 years later only 1 of them or maybe 2 of them will actually be maintained, it isn't any less expensive to go implement something on the ones that don't get utilized versus the winners. And so that has to get passed along, and that affects the price of the product. So I mean, I'm a geek. I believe software can change lives. And it may just be that nobody bothers you on the weekend, or it may mean that you get more done. But if nobody can buy it, then you can't actually affect anything. So if somebody has a need and the product is really expensive and they can't buy anything as a result, then I can't help them. But if it means that there's a feature that's a little bit later, but they end up with something that's useful the day that they download it, it's actually better for them at the end of the day.
Does that make sense what I said about the
model?
Well, that's us anyway. That's how and we're successful with that. But I understand where you're coming
from. You guys
from.
don't have to dump millions into R&D to be part of a discussion. I like you guys. I really do. The problem is every time I get in a room with you guys, I have these headbutting conversations with you guys. I've been a THWAC ambassador, and as part of my THWAC ambassador thing, I said we need to become part of the discussion. Not just you guys, me including. As an industry, this stuff's broken. SNMP doesn't work to where we need to go. The network management sucks. You know, I'm right on board with Terry and these guys with this. You guys have a leadership role, and you've clearly not defined that as yourselves yet, and that's a problem for you as a company. It's not a problem for me as a client, because I've got other options. But as a company, it's a problem for you guys that you have not defined that you're a leader in this market. So you don't have to spend millions to be part of a discussion and to drive standards and to drive the discussion. You sit in a place to drive the discussion, and you should do it. If you don't, you guys will pay for it in 5 years.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And you're right. We don't have to spend millions in engineering to be part of this forum. Maybe we should do it. We should do it. You know, I was speaking more from an implementation standpoint. You are speaking more from a definition of the standards.
Yeah, from an implementation perspective, the vendors have to implement it before you guys can do anything with it. I get that.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page.
But you have to start the discussion now, because the vendors have their heads in the cloud and in the data center and everything else, and they could really care less because we're gimping on it right now. But the crazy thing is, I know for a fact that there are people who have non-Cisco networks who are buying baby IP SLA routers because it's the closest, most cost-effective thing they can do right now in the market to do it.
Shadow routers, yeah.
And it's stupid. There should be a standard within the industry that allows us deep-leveled management. You guys can lead that discussion, and it will drive revenue for you.
There used to have one. It used to be called RTT mod. There used to have to be a standard called.
That's what IP SLA is.
Well, that was before IP SLA, if I remember well. I think IP SLA.
Yeah, marketing people got involved.
Fair enough.
Okay, the next marketing guy comes in and says, I can change the name of this.
No, but I mean, no, but the point is, that was an RFC. That was a standard. We're talking, 10 years ago? That was a standard, and Cisco implemented it, and I think it became IP SLA. At the point, it was even called SAA agent, if you remember, right? Service Assurance Agents, or a bad name, but there used to be a standard for that, and except Cisco, who took a leadership position in there, nobody did anything. I'm not aware of many implementations for RTT mod.
There are other products out there. Have you run across Atneta?
I've heard, no, we hear about the name sometimes.
Go write it down.
Okay.
I give homework assignments, I'm sorry.
Okay, no,
I used to do training a lot, so
he gives homework assignments to John Chambers.
So Atneta, so what are they doing?
Just what Josh was talking about. Okay. It's small, low-cost probes. It's a little Linux box that you can hold in your hand, PoE powered, and it's basically an IP SLA responder.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
I've actually heard about that.
Block of hardware. They also have server. They do cloud and server. Provides really, really good visibility into networks. We use it on our network assessments.
Yeah.
Particularly for tracking voice and video and. Gosh, it doesn't work here. Well, let's go bring in Atneta and take a look at the network. Oh, yeah, this particular path is having problems.
Right. We've thought about solutions like that in probes, to fix this problem and others. The problem we have with this kind of solution that involve hardware is it breaks one of the fundamentals, which is these products have to be easy to download and install. How do you download a hardware probe? Right? Our business model promotes, I'm not saying it's impossible.
Ever heard of virtualization?
Well,
software agent.
Yeah, but you need to start deploying.
The Atneta folks have a software agent that you can load on this guy, and it's been endpoint now.
Yeah, but how do you manage your remote site? Well, you could ping them from your central site to the remote site. But you see, my point is that having hardware, it fixes some issues. It's difficult for us because the download, easy to use, easy to install, easy to realize value becomes more complicated for us. That's why sometimes we're maybe...
Well, that's where the leaders are. Back to Josh's point. Okay. The other thing is software-defined networking is going to change the industry. That's my prediction.
I can believe that.
And if you're not moving ahead of that curve, you're going to be behind the curve.
Okay.
Well, I think if you bring it into or actual terms, SDN topologies aren't explosive.
Right.
And so that it's to provide. The reality is, no matter if you're running an SDN network, a classic topology, you still need a dashboard to manage data, right? But being able to pull actionable information is even more critical, and being able to overlay information of your application visibility versus including your network topology is important. Now, can you do it with an SP-based platform? No, you're not able to. So being able to utilize these new APIs to be able to play in that is critical.
Yeah, let's be clear. We have nothing against API. We're just happy to do APIs. I mentioned a few when we have the demand for it. But don't leave this room thinking Orion is an SNMP only. This is not right.
Okay, so
we're just doing it when people ask for it.
So you have the network map here. Okay,
yes.
To get to the virtualization and the SDN sort of stuff, you have a physical layer map, basically. And I'm going to layer on top of that a whole new virtual layer. Okay, network virtualization is where it's going to be.
Right.
How do I visualize my virtual network that's overlaid over my physical network when all you're displaying to me is the physical network? That's what's going to leave you behind.
Yeah, okay, no, that's... Or actually, being very active in the topology, you'll see one of the we're not quite there yet, but we recognize the fact that visual topology at physical, logical, virtual...
Okay, if you can show me a VLAN map today, then I'll be happy that you're making progress.
This topology mapper does the VLAN?
Let's we'll check and see if it's in that discovery.
But, I mean, this is, so I think...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to give you guys a time check that we have about 40 minutes left here, so it's a rousing discussion, but we want to make sure that we
let's
get
to
through
everything they've got.
Do you want to take a video break?
If you want to do that, that'd be fine.
Well, that's essentially what I have.
Show for NPM.
We've done that. We've done that. We've done that. I think actually in 2 minutes.
And I love the idea that you guys are sitting here saying, SolarWinds is in a special position to basically make the industry move forward on this. That you guys can, because as a company who isn't interested in making hardware and competing with the networking vendors and everything, it really.
Well, it kind of brings. I was just thinking of a conversation that I believe we were having over drinks last night or somewhere around randomly about the ability to. If I have a failed network interface on a physical layer, to be able to signal that up to manage it, whether you're doing it through the control plane of your SDN platform or whether a guy's like, crap, my interface is broke. Being able to capture that signaling and have both your physical network and a view into your logical network. And I know SDN seems like it's the big fancy companies it is right now, but the reality is commercial companies are implementing software switching right now. If you think of just a VMware's vSwitch and so on.
Yeah, the vSwitch.
It's computer science. And what does the software industry do, right? They've got $10 billion worth of software debuggers and modeling. We've got ping and trace route.
The big challenge right now with this virtualization stack, I think that really the key to any kind of management software is going to be cutting through the layers of the stack and showing how different virtualized components relate to each other. And I think that that's got what you guys are asking for, right? You see that network virtualization is coming, and so that's the direction.
Networking is already done. And we didn't get, networking didn't get anything out of virtualized networking. The next version of networking is the problem because vendors like SolarWinds rely on standardized APIs. Today it's called SNMP. It's a crap API, but that's all we got, right?
Exactly. What else are they supposed to rely on?
What they're trying to say is tomorrow's APIs is Nicira, Cisco Nexus 1000V. It's going to be the SDN people with their controllers. You're not out there leading the discussion for a defined API. You're not going to be able to participate in SDN because there's going to be no API that's universally applied across all of the technology stack. So for most people, SolarWinds has a limited... I'm building clouds, and SolarWinds doesn't play because I don't use SNMP. I use XML APIs using REST or JSON, and I'm customizing them, right? SolarWinds doesn't have an API. I can't provision data into SolarWinds because you don't have a northbound API that allows my enterprise app store to configure it.
Well, we have the API. We'll come back to that. But we have an API to
and then the southbound
configure the
thing is you
system.
don't plug into any of the virtual switches I have. So your ability to configure vShield edges, your ability to be part of the deployment cycle and monitoring cycle of a vShield edge, for example,
well, we have vSwitch. We support. I mean, we can monitor vSwitch. Actually, in the NetFlow one of the.
Yeah, but not with an API, but with SNMP.
Right.
Right, and SNMP is yesterday's technology. It has no future. I'm done with SNMP.
Start thinking OVSDB. Right?
OVSDB, OFConfig, OpenFlow, loading entries into the OpenFlow map table to track.
Yeah, we're looking at OpenFlow.
Well,
we have thoughts about it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, if they did that,
yeah,
what would you think of?
I want to know that they are doing. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't want them to do it.
But
I want you to be standing in the debate saying, "Where's my monitoring APIs? Where's my management APIs for all of these virtual switches, for all of these virtual devices, so that we can provide tools that give me visibility."
When we'll see the demand, and by the way, we start seeing it. I mean, we are seeing it growing, and there is this threshold above which we decide to pull the trigger. Well, a typical release for us is 6 months. This kind of implementation can be done in less than a year. We think we can do it twice as fast as the big four because of the reactivity that we have, because of the agility that we have. So our business model is listen to you guys, listen to users, and when we feel the demand, we look at the others, what they've done, the mistakes they've done, the lack of usability they've implemented, and say, all right, that was version 1.0 of that solution. Now the users have been through that pain with the big four. Now this is how the users believe this should be done. And we do the version 2, and it's cheaper, and it's better. And yes, we're a little bit late, and yes, we could be part of this. I mean, forward thinking. The bet is that we're reacting fast, and we don't need to be thoughtful leader. We are in some of them, but that's not where the focus is, right? But we're pretty damn fast reacting behind that. Well, not all the time, we're late on some topics, but I mean,
and I would even say that SDN is a little bit different for us, right? I mean, you hit the point, which is there's a whole lot of broken APIs and standards out there that SDN, for vendors like us, should actually simplify the problem, because there'll be a standard set of APIs that'll make it easier for us to be even more nimble than we already are. But beyond that, we aren't talking that much about SDN yet, but believe me, it's a big part of the conversations that we're having, because we do recognize that it's a chance to actually figure out, if you have Cisco saying, oh no, just buy us, or VMware saying, no, just go with our implementation, you'll be fine. Most customers are going to be in the same situation where they're going to have multi-vendors, and does it all work together or not? And so that, for us, is the real problem that we can solve, like we saw with other issues. Being able to pull multiple APIs from multiple vendors into one dashboard. So that piece of it, believe me, we're talking about that. We'll talk about some more. And we are getting to be like, you guys saw the post where we kind of upset VMware talking about their business model last year. Did you guys see that? When they changed the licensing, and we basically said you abandon the SMB market. And they reacted angrily. And then this year they did us the honor of putting us on a competitive page on the VMware site as a competing software vendor, which is really hysterical. So the fact that they took the time to do that, we do recognize that we do have a growing voice. So you'll hear us talking about this more.
So I want to be really cognizant of your time, but it's only really hysterical from the VMware point of view until you sat at VMworld like I did with your virtualization management team, and they flat out told me, we want to take over all hypervisor management and monitoring. And I went, hold on, that's exactly what VMware does. So you are competitive to them. You aren't just a management, you're not just a view of their product. Your product goal, as stated by your virtualization team, is to compete directly with VMware. So again, I don't want to go off page with that, but you say it's hysterical. It's not. You're competitive.
No, but I mean,
I think they're just flattered.
That's what I'm saying.
The fact that they're proud of that.
Yeah, that they've called us out on their site, that's big.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to show you one on IP SLA, which I think is pretty interesting. So you all know that IP SLA, you see the different types of probes here. I won't go through that. What I wanted to show you is this, which we think is pretty interesting. I'd like your feedback on that, is correlating the IP SLA synthetic traffic with CDRs. So that's the CDR. I mean, you all know what a CDR is, well, call origin, call destination. That's the actual call that happens, the record that the CCM is sending us. And what's interesting here, and that's fairly recent, I don't have tons of user feedback on that. But what we're doing here, the way to read this is this. This is, what you see on the left is the call from the origin to the destination. And what you see on the right is that the path, the end-to-end operation that correlates with that. So
that doesn't scale.
What?
That does not scale. I'm looking at an individual call. I have thousands and thousands of calls in my network a day.
Yeah.
I can't look at each individual call.
Well, no, but you can, no, okay, but you can
filter.
filter.
What I want is, so let me tell you what does work and scales well is I need a report that says these set of phones had these have problems talking with these other sets of phones.
Right.
And what that tells me is, and I need to know which direction the problem was, because that then tells me which paths potentially had the problem.
Right.
Okay.
That's kind of what the screen before, I didn't spend time on it, but the screen before has a bunch of filters and criteria where you can narrow down from thousands of phones. The pattern, that's what the screen before was designed to do, help you detecting patterns. Your example is perfect. From that site to that site, we have a critical performance issue.
Yeah.
Then you select one of them, you drill down here, and what this does is it puts in perspective what the call was with the MOS score and the jitter and whatever was important to actually view the quality of that call with what the corresponding IP SLA operation experiences. And we're using the path version of it, which gives you the hop-by-hop view. So basically, if you're introducing jitter, for example, hopefully, because again, IP SLA is a synthetic traffic generation technology. It doesn't look at the actual traffic, as you know. But hopefully, the network reacted the same way for the probe, i.e. if router number 2, which is here was the one introducing jitter, that was the same reason why the actual call experienced that issue. So that's a way to leverage what the probe is telling you and detecting, troubleshooting that the fact that router number 2 is the guilty component, which looking at the CDR only will never tell you. The CDR will tell you, you have an end-to-end jitter issue, good luck figuring out where it is. And what we're doing is putting the two in perspective so you can use the IP SLA probe to troubleshoot what the CDR bad quality was.